1984, Wes Craven unleashed a low-budget, dark, and sinister film that gave us a child-killing, dream-haunting monster that knows no mercy, preying on helpless teens in their sleep where there is no escape. Before he became an icon and a horror cliche, Freddy Krueger was as badass as it got. The horror genre was all but dead in the early 90s. That is, until Wes Craven single-handedly saved the horror world from obscurity. Taking the meta approach, Scream went on to reinvent the genre, make careers, spawn numerous sequels, and become a seminal film for a new fan base. Wes Craven babies do battle on this next episode of Horror Face Off. All right, everybody, welcome to Horror Face Off. Today we have a heavy-hitting matchup, and I don't say that about all of them, but it's a Wes Craven dream matchup. Nightmare on Elm Street versus Scream. And I hope that wasn't a spoiler, but it's probably just the easiest prop you had, right? Laying around.
It's the only prop I had around.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, so and joining me is Chris from Australia. How's it going, Chris?
I'm doing well, man. How are you?
I'm good. What do you got going on these days?
Flat chat, man. So I've got my YouTube channel doing Halloween content at the moment. Halloween Ends just dropped, so I've been doing a lot of stuff around that. Like we spoke about before, I'm off to Canada in a week, heading your guys' way. Apart from that, just wrapping up commissions for the year, and yeah, just everything is happening, but that's the way I like it.
Awesome. Thanks for finding time to be on the show.
Of course, man.
Jay, second time on the show, so we didn't break you the first time.
No, I had a good time, and I'm glad to be back. I love these movies.
Awesome. Yeah. Okay, so we're gonna start off with the story, and we're gonna start out. Jay, since you're a seasoned veteran of this show, we're gonna give you the floor for story. Go.
All right, story. Damn. I was hoping someone else would start with this one because I was a bit torn on it. No, yeah, I was thinking about it, and I had to lean towards Scream on it. It was not an easy choice. Like I give Nightmare props for its concept, and it's scary, like it's a scary idea, but as a story, it was just kind of fine, and it kind of flops a bit in the third act. So I got to give it to Scream. That's Scream was like pretty well constructed little puzzle box that right. Paid off pretty well in the end.
Well, I'm going to put the pressure on our newest guest by making him the tiebreaker, because I'm going with Nightmare on Elm Street on this one. I when you're talking story, you're talking about the same guy, so it stands to reason that there's strengths in both stories. Scream really didn't have a weakness, in the sense that I thought it was a well thought out just play on the horror genre. It was kind of fresh and what you needed at the time. But when you're talking about the story of a whole bunch of teens being terrorized by a guy that kills you in your sleep, to me that was pretty unique. That was pretty special, and I mean, we're gonna probably try and keep the sequels out of this matchup, but it was inventive. The imagination could take you wherever you want to go. So I'm gonna give it to Nightmare on Elm Street for the story. Chris, you're the tiebreaker.
I'm gonna go Nightmare on Elm Street, fellas. And look, with what Jay said, it was tough because Scream was just hit at the perfect time in '96, just that the late '90s, and again, it is like you said, a well constructed little story. The whodunit thing, that kind of essence of Cluedo and stuff like that. But with Elm Street, it's just such a brilliant little story. The concept of a dream demon, because everyone has to sleep, everyone dreams. And the whole aspect of that kind of Pied Piper thing, the parents' dirty little secret of burning this guy alive years ago and, covering it up. And it's the town's little secret. And, in this case on Elm Street, it's their little secret. And I think just the character of Freddy within that story is just so different. And to have been a teenager back in 1984 just would have been like one of those, oh, what a time to be alive thing. Like to witness this on screen for the first time, because no one had ever seen anything like it. So I'm going to go with Elm Street.
Awesome. There you go, Jay. All right. So we're going to move on to setting. I'll lead off on this one. I'm going to talk this out because I kind of don't know. I love screen. I love movies that take place in high schools and school environments. To me, it's like it's just I get a kick out of it. So Scream is there, right? It's right in the high school. It's everybody's high school. It's and I love that. And then the big party at the end in the house, like that's fun. That's like and it was a cool house. Looked really, really layered, textured, and all that kind of stuff. So I was kind of really impressed with where the climax of the film took place. And then you got Elm Street, and it's this. The one thing that pisses me off about Elm Street is it's supposed to be Ohio, but it looks so California, and it's not something that ruins a film for me. But if we're breaking it down and we're going categorically and we're saying setting, that's a knock. That's a big knock on it for me. Because I loved it. I love it. Again, you got the school, you got the suburbs. That like it's a really nice environment for for the worst possible nightmare to happen. And but because it looks the way it does, and it's not supposed to be California, I'm going to give this to Scream. So we're going to go to Chris on this.
I'm going to go with Scream for settings. Yeah, because they hadn't fleshed out Springwood in the first one. That you never got the name Springwood, and it's a deleted shot. You don't even see the Elm Street sign. It was shot originally by Sean S. Cunningham in the film, and he was doing pickup stuff with Heather and Robert running down the alleyway, and they never put it in. But by the time we only found out it was Springwood by Elm Street 2, and it was only because when they were writing the script and everything, and Jack Scholl, the director's like, suppose we better give this town a name. But then with Woodsboro, it's all fleshed out.
Yeah,
it's all there. And it's funny, we have the high school Springwood, we have the high school in Elm Street, we have the high school in Scream, we have the infamous houses that are so iconic looking, and I just feel like Scream had it all worked out more from the get-go, whereas it took for the second film in the Elm Street franchise to tell you it's Springwood and just flesh out the town a bit more. But in the first one, there wasn't really any of that. So I'm going to go with Scream.
Awesome. And to that, I mean, you're talking about a guy who, this was his calling card, the, film Elm Street. And then, 12 years later or whatever, he had a lot more seasoning, and he was able to probably, take the time to do what he did with Scream and flesh it out, like you said. Jay, you're up.
I agree.
That's it.
No, you guys said everything. Like that was one of the big things about is Woodsboro really felt like a real place. It's a place that really they had it concrete right from the beginning, right through all the sequels. That finale in that house, that's the one thing about Scream that just really elevates it on one level above Nightmares, is just how much stronger the finale is. Like the finale of Scream is so good.
Let's not give a spoiler. We got an ending category.
I know, but I want to say that final house is so iconic that all they had to do was show it to you. Sorry, spoilers for the new one. All they had to do was show it to you again in Scream 5, and you're just like, holy shit.
Yeah.
So yeah, 100% Scream.
True.
Yeah.
Okay, and actually, Chris, you might know this. Why was it a conscious decision to make Elm Street Ohio when it clearly could have just been California? Like, I mean, there's nothing in the story. I don't know, and I'm putting you on the spot. There's nothing in the story to say it has to be Ohio. Do you know why they went that
I
route?
think Wes always had that notion, just that idea of suburbia. That's what he loved. And that's what even Robert says he loves about the first one. It's just got that suburbia feeling, even though if you guys have ever been to 1428 Genesee Avenue, I've been there a couple of times. You literally walk, I'm going to say, and I'm going in meters, like 100 meters to the end of the street, and some Sunset Boulevard is there.
Yeah.
Like the location scouting was on point, but my God, like Sunset Boulevard is just like just over there. Just walk over there and you're on Sunset Boulevard. But then you turn around, you're like, that looks suburbia, Americana kind of feel. I think that's what he always had. And like he named it Elm Street because that's the street Kennedy was shot on. Like there's a lot to it. And I think he just always loved that, just that idea of suburbia. But obviously, limitations wise, he had to stay within LA. So that's all they could do.
Yep. All right, cool. All right, so we're moving on to filmmaking, and we're going to start with you, Chris.
I'm going to go Elm Street, because even though when they filmed Scream and tech had advanced with making films, the fact that they got Elm Street made when it seriously should not have been made, given the financing, everything that could have gone wrong went wrong during the filming. And I think it was guerrilla filmmaking at its finest. There was a lot of things they had to overcome. Wes, the crew, they had to think on the spot a lot. They were running out of money. At one point, they ran out of money, and the processing lab that was processing the film wouldn't release the negatives to them. They're like, you're not going to pay us. We're not releasing the film to you. So I think when you're put under that type of pressure, your best work comes out. Whereas I feel with Scream, obviously, because Wes was a lot more refined as, he was the horror maestro. I feel it was a lot more controlled. Whereas with Elm Street, it was just like balls to the wall, like thinking on your feet. What is today going to entail? We got a guide, but things can go wrong, and they did go wrong. And I think everyone put their best foot forward. Like at one point, they couldn't even pay the crew for a couple of weeks, the cast and crew, and they're like, "Yeah, we'll still work because we believe in this." So I think there was just a lot. Not to say that there wasn't hard in Scream, there absolutely was, but everyone was just digging deep from the sounds of it. The documentaries I watched, like Never Sleep Again, and all that type of stuff. It was, I think it was just people doing this because they genuinely loved it and they wanted to see it through. And I'm sure they're glad they did.
Jay.
Well, I have it down as directing from your email, and I was going to give it to Scream. I got us, like, as far as like the ability to take, like, as a director, an older man, Wes Craven, ability to take a whole crew of young actors and kind of pull all these great performances out of them, like Randy Meeks and Stu and Billy and all these characters. Whereas as much as I love Elm Street, the performances by the young actors were really kind of rough in places. Like some of them were stronger.
That's the
than
next
others.
category.
Yeah, I know, but if you have a crew of actors and they're all great, that's a director. That's a good director who knows what he's doing. So as far as directing goes, I'm saying that Wes Craven was on the top of his game, and maybe he had the money and the relaxation that he didn't have to stress out, and that's probably true. But I still think he did a much better job, and just being relaxed and being able to do his job. But
and well, money, more money and just being comfortable doesn't always translate into good filmmaking. We've seen that a number of times, and to your point, casting is part of filmmaking. It's picking the right people, and Scream is really not too flawed. I mean, it's a really tight picture, and it's very beautifully shot. And this is almost a knock on it in a way. Like it's very it's got a studio vibe about it, and I think I love it. I
It's
really
very
do.
90s sheen on it. That
Yeah,
is,
it does. Sheen
you
is
can,
good.
you can feel that 90s vibe from like
Smooth and just
smooth, nice colors. Everything seems
yeah.
pretty. They hadn't turned up the grit because Saw hadn't come out yet or
Yeah,
whatever,
no,
or
definitely not.
Seven.
Definitely not.
Yeah.
And that was a polished look that
Hmm.
Craven wanted, right? And actually I think his films kind of took that, moving forward, he kind of stayed with that, which is fine. Again, I'm knocking it because it looked too good in a way. But I agree with you, Chris, with Elm Street. Like it was gritty, it was 80s, but it even looked older. I mean, at times it was just like it looked like they were struggling and suffering for their art in a good way. And I just, the feel of Elm Street, the sound design is pretty, offsetting at times. So I kind of like that. And sometimes I'm not all about gritty and it has to look ugly because it's a horror film, because there's horror films that have done that and fallen flat on their face. This doesn't do that. So when I kind of think of like which movie kind of leaves more of a mark on me, I'm gonna have to go with Elm Street on filmmaking. But yeah. So all right. So we're gonna start off with you, Jay, on this one. We're gonna go actors and characters. In the past, I've kind of split these up. And then I found that each kind of category kind of bled into each other. So I'm putting them together so you could say your piece on both, but then just give me a mark for one.
Cool. Well, the answer's the same for both. Again, Scream. I do have Nightmare as a choice later. I'm not shitting on Nightmare, but as far as actors, and especially like every single one of the main players in Scream is like on point. All the main performers, you've got Billy and Stu as the killers, and each one of them is like a killer for their own, I mean, absurd reasons, but distinct, and they're in each one of them is really good in their specific roles. Dewey, the Tatum, Randy, all these like Sid, all these names are like, they're iconic. Like they just bring these faces to. Whereas for me, it's like I go Nancy, the blonde one, the tough guy, Johnny Depp. I was just thinking, like, I remember them, and I've seen the movie several times, but none of them come alive except in the fear scenes. Like the nightmare scenes are really good with them, but beyond that, they were kind of stereotypes. Like the tough guy just is like pulled a knife on the guy at one point. I was like, so yeah, and then the mother character never really sold it to me. She's I don't know. I don't know what to say about Nightmare on Elm Street. I love it, but that was kind of a weak area for me. So Scream.
All right, Chris.
I'm gonna go Scream. You've got a terrific little cast, and don't get me wrong, the cast was great in Elm Street, but their dialogue, their performances have dated quite a bit. It was definitely like their acting was definitely a product of the time. And even though, as we said, Scream has that 90s sheen, it is definitely a product of its time. I still think those performances are timeless because they're just such different characters, such interesting and different characters. You got Skeet, you got Matthew Lillard, you got Jamie Kennedy, Rose McGowan, Nev. They're just doing something different, which is great. They're their own person. It feels as if each one of them has developed a history of the character before filming, and I love that. And the interactions are great. Like the scene between Skeet, Matthew, and Jamie in the video shop, and Jamie has his big speech where he just loses his absolute mind, I think is just great. And it's still like you said, Jay, those names you can put the face to. You say Scream, and then you say Cindy and Randy and Billy, and like everyone will be like, yeah, I remember them. But with Elm Street, it's probably just going to be Nancy, not Tina, not Glenn, not Rod, not Marge Thompson or Lieutenant Thompson. So I'm going to go with Scream.
Awesome. Again, this is an example where Scream kind of had a flawless I'm not saying it's a flawless film, but I'm just saying, like, with the casting, I mean, you had people that died in the first act that still kind of resonated with people. There was no throwaway characters. There was no weak performances that I remember. It's really, really, and there's a lot of, a lot of people, fan out on these characters, and it's not even necessarily the main characters. Like, Jamie Kennedy has like a fan base based on his, his performance in that film. And he was kind of like the nerdy guy that would have gotten forgotten in an 80s film, right? But Elm Street, yeah, here's my thing with Elm Street is that performance wise, it was weak, and it really kind of, I know I'm going to say something that, a lot of people would probably, slap me on the wrist for, but Heather Langenkamp wasn't very good in that film. And you could say whatever you want about her character. I'm not, bashing Nancy in any way, but there's some lines that are just really, cringeworthy when you listen to them. And like I said, I know there's people that love her, and God bless you, but I mean, you still got to be able to, assess a performance. And there's times where she delivers the line, I'm just like, I'm out of it, and it just for that quick second. So, and that happens even, like Nancy's mom, she sounds like she's, having an orgasm every time she's talking to her. And I'm like, I don't know about this. I don't know what's going on here. Like, it's, you're holding a bottle of booze and you're talking pretty sexy right now. And you're supposed to be, delivering the worst news ever to your child. So there were some performance problems in Elm Street that, where I agree with Chris on, like, just the grittiness of the filmmaking. It worked for filmmaking. It didn't work for the performances, and that's unfortunate. So long answer. Sorry. Scream. All right. So this one's kind of an interesting one because I'm really curious about this. So we're going to start off with you, Chris, and we're going to go to the scare factor.
All right. Okay. Ooh. All right. That's tricky. It's hard when you're dealing with something that's set in reality and something that is fantasy, like something with Scream that could happen. And unfortunately, it has happened. Whereas you've got Nightmare on Elm Street, where it's fantasy based. It's, the dreamscape and stuff like that. But still, I'm going to go with Elm Street. I still think Tina's death and the way Wes transitions from reality into a dream is seamless. You don't know what's dream, what's when they're dreaming, when it's reality. And I think the way it was just shot as well, like the cinematography was just so well done. Like, and when you've got all these people working together, and it's just that lightning in a bottle, and I felt the scare factor. And also it helps when it's Robert's great performance. This is his first time doing it, and I wouldn't say you can see him trying to settle into it, but he's just having so much fun. Like, if he was wearing just a mask, he'd just have the biggest shit-eating grin under that mask. But he's got that grin through the makeup, and it's scary the way he's lit. I love how little he is lit. Yeah. And it relies on the reflection of the shininess of the open wounds. And I just felt Elm Street, because I saw the first Elm Street and Scream when I was young. So either way, I'm going to have, the bejesus scared out of me, but I still feel Elm Street had the shock value in terms of the scares.
Jay.
Scare factor for me is it was a close one, because there were elements in Scream that like still like haunted me. But Nightmare definitely takes it. I remember the first time I ever heard about it, I was a little kid, and my friend, who was one of those little kids who manages to see horror movies like 5 years before every other little kid, he described Tina's death, getting dragged up to the ceiling and cuts appearing on her body, and just the description of that scene gave me nightmares. I had nightmares about Nightmare on Elm Street before I watched Nightmare on Elm Street, and then when I watched it, it gave me a whole new batch of nightmares. Whereas I saw, and maybe it's not fair, I saw Scream when I was a little older. It was still frightening, but on a slightly different level. I was a little more mature. So yeah, 100% Nightmare on Elm Street.
I gotta say, Scream never scared me. I never felt any kind of I just enjoyed it. It was just a fun movie for me. So it never really ever scared me. Maybe I'm dating myself when I saw it, but and Elm Street, you know, it's like you said, like, I mean, the way Fred Krueger was lit was amazing. I mean, and it's frustrating too because there's so few good pictures of that production. Like, you know, I'd love to see a lot more because it was so. But like, you know, it was brilliantly done. You know, he wasn't overexposed or over the top yet, and it just that was a creepy killer and one hell of a concept, right? Like, I mean, it was like Jaws, right? Jaws made people afraid to go in the water. Nightmare on Elm Street plays with sleep, right? So, and here's another thing where I talk to the scare of it. You sit down, you know, if you have a bunch of kids and you say, okay, let's watch a scary movie, you're pretty sure that you can maybe put on Scream and they'll go to bed at night. Now you put on Nightmare on Elm Street and you're going to have some problems because they're not going to want to turn off that light. They're not going to want to fall asleep, right? It messes, it hits a nerve. And you know, again, the franchise went so far one way, but it could have gone another way and it would have really been pretty awesome to see, like, you know. But anyway, so I got to give Nightmare on Elm Street some props for that one. So
awesome.
All right, kills. Who wants to take this one? We'll start off with Jay.
All right, fine. Kills. Well, kills is it was that one was a bit of a tough one because Scream does have some good kills, and Drew Barrymore's in particular was always kind of a really disturbing death for me. She's like her parents are listening to her die over the phone, and then her mother gets sent outside to witness her like guts hanging out. You saw the movie. So it really, like, that in particular, I think is a kill that should rank right up with any Nightmare on Elm Street kills. But his bed ate him. I mean, his bed ate him. And the Tina's death and Johnny Depp's character's death are both so incredibly iconic, and they're burned in my memory for my entire life. And just the ocean of blood on the ceiling and the mother coming in and seeing this, it's just unbelievable. Nightmare wins in a walk with an honorable mention for Drew Barrymore.
All right, I'll take it from here to give Chris last say on this one. I think I'm going to give it to Elm Street as well. And it really, I mean, it's based on two kills, but two really powerful kills. Tina and Glenn. You know, so my thing with Scream is, again, you said it with Drew Barrymore, and maybe Chris, you have a different opinion, and I'd love to hear it. But forgettable kills, like if you haven't seen Scream in a while, you're probably likely to forget how some people die. And to take it even one step further, Rose McGowan with the garage thing, it just kind of loses me at that moment. But yeah, so I'm gonna give it to Elm Street. Chris, what do you got?
Boys, I'm gonna go with Elm Street 2. Again, like with Scream, it's the same, and it's not to take away from it, but you know, most times out of 10, someone just gets stabbed. With the exception of Rose McGowan with the garage door. But with Elm Street, you've got a girl sliced open, dragged up a wall. You've got a young man dragged into his bed and just mushed and spat back out. And I also do, from a writing standpoint, like Rod's death, because it incriminates him further, because it seems as though he's guilty, so he's hung himself in his jail cell. And the special effects for that cost $2 to do, and they just reversed the footage. It's like great old school filmmaking. So and also Marge at the end, Marge Thompson, Nancy's mom, even though it's kind of a bit silly, just that vision of the burnt, charred corpse reaching up as it goes down in the bed, and they had an arc welder under the bed igniting the arc welder, and that's what did the flash. And it's everything's in camera, practical, old school. And again, with the rotating room for Tina and Glenn's death, just practical, and memorable. So Elm
Yeah.
Street.
All right. Okay, so we got to see if Scream can get back on the board. Scream started strong, and it's kind of losing a little bit of ground right now. But we're gonna go with Antagonist, and we'll start with the man we just heard from, Chris.
So Antagonist is gonna have to be Freddy. I think the concept, when you read about the backstory of how Wes designed this character, you know, the red and green are two colors the human eye struggles and stresses to process side by side. You know, the name Fred was a kid that bullied him. The fedora was reminiscent of an old drunk who terrorized him. And then like this thing is like one of the most awesome weapons ever created for horror films. And as opposed to, you know, a buck 120 hunting knife, which is nothing wrong with it. Again, it's a great aesthetic with the costume for Ghostface, but like it's Freddy fucking Krueger, man. Like he's just a badass. So I'm gonna have to go with Freddy.
All right, Jay. What do you got?
Stu Mocker. No, I'm just kidding. Freddy Krueger. You can't. This was the easiest one and the first one I filled in when I was looking at the sheet. I was just like, oh, Nightmare. Yeah, no, it's Freddy Krueger. He was you know, the first slasher with a real personality. The first one that was actually like a person and not just a monster or like a force of nature the way like Jason was. Yeah, no, I mean, Freddy Krueger is 100% iconic, and the antagonist in Scream, by their very nature, they can be anybody. So they don't really have a character until the end.
Yeah.
So, Freddy.
Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna give a little bit of love to Scream in the sense that, you know, I loved the reveal at the end. It didn't let down. You know what I mean? Like that could have been, you know, you could have lost a lot of people there, but I you know, those two guys became iconic for, you know, what they did. And I love that. I love that more than I actually love the Scream getup. Like I kind of feel like I'm a little like, I know a lot of people go crazy with that outfit for even, you know, just like you know, pictures and stuff like that. And it just doesn't really do it for me because he was goofy, right? Like, I mean, he gets kicked, he falls, he makes grunting sounds. And to me, that's an antagonist I could probably take on with a 50-50 shot, right? So you give me a 50-50, you know, I'm less intimidated. Freddy, you know, you don't get the 50-50. And like we said earlier, it's not only that it's Freddy that became as awesome as we know, it's Freddy in part one. I mean, that's a beast on its own. That was awesome. I mean, just the depth of his voice and the look. Yeah. So I mean, if only he stayed that scary. But
oh, dude, yes, yep.
But I will say this, and I think Chris, you and I kind of, I don't know, we went back and forth on this before. I love part two's makeup, and I think you do too. Am I wrong?
Yeah, dude. It's part one and part two for me. I also like, don't hate me, I always have a soft spot for Freddy's Dead because it's just so fucking stupid. In the same vein of watching The Room or Samurai Cop, it's just silly. But yeah, part two, Kevin Yeager, like the eyes, the witch nose, the shininess. Again, the way Freddy's lit in the first two is an example of how you light creature makeup.
Yeah.
If you don't want to give too much away. So yeah, 100%, man.
Cool. All right, guys, this is the last category. Fittingly, it's the ending, the make or break of films. And we're going to start off with Jay.
Well, I'm going to give it, as I think I've already hinted as I went along, that I wasn't 100% sold on the ending of Nightmare on Elm Street. So it's not going to be a huge shock that I think the ending of Scream is the better of the two. I think one of Scream's strengths is that it actually, the finale, the last like 45 minutes is all tight in one location, and it's fun, it's exciting, it's suspenseful. People die left and right, and then the character reveal is really good. Both of the actors are really good. When she turns the tables on them and throws the Scream costume on and kills them, TV on the head, all that stuff works like beautifully. And whereas for me, the ending of the Nightmare on Elm Street, when she pulls him into the reality, maybe it was just like, maybe it's the sign of the times. It was just a bit clunky. It was a bit awkward, and maybe that's what happens when Freddy's in reality, is he's clunky and awkward. But I felt the weakest part of Elm Street was the ending. So and then the pulling through the window at the end was just pulling the stiff as a board mannequin through the window at the end was
100%. That was a sex doll. Come on.
How else could it get through there, right?
That's right. Yeah. So yeah, Scream all the way.
All right, Chris, you want to take it?
I'm going Scream, man. Scream's ending had structure, whereas Elm Street's ending didn't have structure because Wes, Bob Shay, they didn't know how to finish the damn thing. And that's why there were 3 endings shot, and there was a bit of everything. Even they got Robert in the makeup in the front of the car, driving the car, driving them away. They shot him in broad daylight in a car. It's just, you can't do that. I do get where you're coming from, Jay. When Freddy is in the real world, he's no longer a threat. He's a man. He's a little burnt man. He's clumsy. Like Ghostface is clumsy. And like when you said Ghostface is clumsy, I instantly thought of Scary Movie when he's like, I got to start drinking when he falls over.
Yeah.
But I do like it though when he's in the real world and Nancy brings her dad in and you see the fire footsteps going around upstairs. I'm like, ooh, that's dangerous. Yeah. And then he's obviously on top of Marge and stuff like that. But again, and when he goes to stab Nancy and they have that god awful rotoscoping effect when he disappears, when she turns her back on evil and takes that energy away, it was just very lackluster. Whereas you've got this build up with Scream and then the who done it. You're like, oh my God, it was them. Like the first time you see it, if you haven't worked it out. And it just, there was just structure in Scream.
Yeah.
So Scream 100%.
Yeah. I agree with what you're saying about Scream. Elm Street, like, I mean, it's funny because Jay, you took it when we're talking endings, you kind of took it back even further than I would have. Like when he comes out of that's the climax for sure. You know, like I guess, yeah, you could say that's the ending. Yeah, he was clumsy. There was a point where he was even in the cellar looking for Nancy, and then she scares him, like, you know, and but it was kind of like, it was okay. It worked. You know, because she had to kind of turn the tables a little bit on him. And so I was okay with that. But you're right. When they showed the footsteps, the fire steps up the stairs and the music and everything, that was really, really cool. That was powerful. I was like, you know, I feel like Elm Street had like a few too many endings, even though not even including the ones that didn't shoot. Like it should have ended with him on the bed, you know, in the fire. But then there was you know, that what you were saying about Nancy when he jumps at her. I don't know if that needed to be there. I think like, you know, that kind of, you know, just somber ending of he went down with the mother. And then on top of it all, if that wasn't bad enough, you had that, you know, rosy ending. You know, where universally, I don't think you could be a Nightmare on Elm Street fan and love that ending. I mean, prove me wrong, people, if you disagree, but even if you're a hardcore Elm Street fan, you have issues with the way that movie wrapped up. For sure. And it's unfortunate, you know, because it was a pretty tight film. And but you know, the ending kind of got blown. All right. So we've added everything up, and it was a really close battle between Wes Craven babies. And in the end, Nightmare on Elm Street with 13 points and Scream with 11. So,
yeah.
It was it was as close as it could be without being a tie. So that's pretty, and I think that's fitting.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think, you know, I thought we broke it down pretty good, and and I, you know, my one knock is I think we agreed too much. I'm sorry, but I think it was
fair enough. A
lot of agreeing going on.
Yeah.
But
well, you know what? When you pick two great movies and everyone loves the movies, it's gonna be hard for people to get heatedly angry about.
It's like having two kids. You're like, which kid do you love the most? You're like, oh, I love them equally, but secretly.
That's it. He nails it. All right. Well, anyways, thanks for joining us on this episode of Horror Face Off. I'd like to thank Chris, Cosplay Chris. Check him out on YouTube for joining me. And Jay, You don't got a YouTube channel, but
I don't got nothing. I got nothing.
we're still going to send you lots of love because you're an
Thanks.
awesome guest. Thank you guys, and we'll see you soon. Stay scary, everyone.